Hello, everyone, and welcome to 127 episodes of Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. We are joined by Joseph Mallozzi, executive producer of Stargate Universe, in this episode to discuss Season 1 of that series. Before we roll into that, if you really enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal to me if you click that like button. It makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will help the show continue to grow. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on the gateworld.net YouTube channel. They are our partner. As this episode is a live show, Joseph Mallozzi has joined us to take your questions live. So if you are in the YouTube audience at youtube.com/dialthegate, my moderating team, I believe it's Summer and Tracy today, are taking your questions for Joe. And in the second half of the show, we will turn everything over to you guys for those questions. But until then, it's me and Joe. Joseph Mallozzi, executive producer, Stargate Universe. Welcome back, sir. How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I am good. We are on the third and final show. And like you said earlier, it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
What was it like doing a third one of these things? And what was the first meeting like where you heard that they wanted to, or I guess Sci-Fi wanted to?
No, I mean, they had been discussing doing a spin-off for a while. And by they, I refer to Brad Wright and Robert Cooper, the co-creators of Stargate Atlantis. And Brad was a co-creator of SG-1. And yes. They'd been talking about ending SG-1 with the 7th season and then spinning off a new series called Stargate Command. But then, we ended up getting the pickup for the 8th season, or was the 8th season, the 9th season, the 10th season. And so they ended up working on a completely different spinoff, which turned out to be Atlantis. And so they did that one. And then, as Atlantis was getting into its, I think, 5th season, they had started talking about this third spinoff. And they wanted to do something very different. And I remember them going in, they had the idea and they pitched it. They kind of soft pitched it, meaning I think, they didn't have a whole lot of details, but they had a kind of a sense of what the show was going to be, and they pitched it
to Sci-Fi.
And I believe it was Sci-Fi, yeah. Okay. And Sci-Fi loved it, and they asked, well, what is it called? And I'm not sure which one of them basically just on the spot suggested a placeholder title, and maybe it's Stargate Universe. And they loved it. And they're like, great, Stargate Universe. Thus, Stargate Universe was born. And, as was the case with Atlantis, they worked on the pilot while we were in production on Atlantis. And then we heard, we got the green light, which was great. And then shortly afterwards, we heard that we received the red light on Atlantis season 6, which was not so great. So it was kind of a bittersweet a moment for us, or month, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we ended up rolling into Stargate Universe and breaking stories for Stargate Universe, which was tonally very different. But, Brad and Robert wanted to do something different. So there you go.
Absolutely. Did you think when you first heard this pitch for a third one, did you think automatically this was something that you wanted to do? Or after so many years of this, was it time to potentially, not absolutely, but potentially consider another, chapter in your life?
When you're on a long-running series, you in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, maybe this is the time to step off and try something new. But as someone once told me, that's crazy talk. And I think 99 times out of 100, when someone leaves a successful show to embark on their, illustrious solo career, it doesn't work out for them. So I was always
people
mindful
like Mark
of that.
are the exceptions.
Yeah. Yes. And I was always appreciative. So, yes, there was that 1%. but the majority don't. So I was always appreciative of the opportunity afforded me on Stargate, and I frankly love the franchise. I love the characters, and the prospect of doing a third Stargate a Stargate series, but doing something very different intrigued me.
What intrigued you the most about this premise? What were the new directions that you were going to be able to go off in that was like, you know what, I think I can sink my teeth into this one?
I mean, conceptually, I loved the idea of a ship show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of classic sci-fi, but with like a Stargate angle. So that really appealed to me. I really love the kind of the ensemble dynamic. And that's another thing that always appealed to me. And I've always been a big fan of ensemble shows. And, you know, I mean, SG1 and Atlantis were an ensemble as well, but I guess not to the extent that Universe was, in that, you know, the cast of characters there were so many of them, and so many of them who were not necessarily background characters, but more kind of peripheral characters initially, Brody or Park, characters, Volker, characters like that who were really, really supporting players, and yet because of the performances by the actors, you know, Peter Kalamis and Jennifer Spence and Patrick Gilmore, we ended up giving them more to do, and the characters grew, and as a result, you know, our cast grew, our cast of characters grew, and that was a lot of fun.
They furthered the plot. I mean,
yes.
One of my frustrations about Star Trek Discovery is that, you know, Sonequa is great as the lead, but there's her entire bridge crew, you know, would have, in a show like Next Generation, have had episodes, you know, that focused on them, and we never get to meet them because it's not an ensemble show. It is her show, and maybe like 2 or 3 peripheral characters. And in Atlantis, it was Flanagan and Hewlett's show, and I agree. I think that with Universe expanding the palette so that more people had a chance to shine really lent itself to, I think, further storytelling.
Yeah, I agree.
And I have to say, originally, Destiny being pitched as a ship show, I wasn't sure if it would work, because if the ship becomes the vehicle, then what's the purpose of the Stargate? But then, as you watch it, the Stargate really takes the place of transporter and shuttlecraft. Right. It's still, the ship still has its own limitations, so I think it works.
Yeah, and you know, I love the limitations. The fact that it was a ticking clock that when planet came in range, you had a window in which to get down to the planet, explore, and then get back onto the ship. Because if you missed that window, then you weren't catching the shuttle bus down the road. That was it.
It was, I was surprised in circumstances where it was like, we had people who did indeed miss the timer, and the ship will go on without you. Like there's unless there is some exterior circumstance that gets you back on board, you're not coming back. You know, who among the core cast were you really impressed with in these initial episodes as the show was growing?
You know, it's hard for me to answer that question, because one of the things that I remember being struck by the fact that they were all very, very, very strong, top to bottom. And I mean, it just became more and more apparent as the show went on, but it's very rare that you have such an incredibly strong cast from top to bottom. I mean, usually your leads are always great, and then your supporting characters are, can be great, and in which case they pop, or sometimes, they're I had to say about adequate, and they just serve the function. But in this case, I mean, just right across the board, just a really, really, really strong and very deep cast.
Yeah, some recede into the background as the show goes along, because some are working better than others just by nature of the material and the actor working together. So I get it. What about bringing in the communication stones once again? Was this always a core component of the show, or was this a few weeks in, oh, you know what, let's go ahead and
No, it was always a core component of the show, and Brad and Rob always argued that the reason we use the stones, and I think it's something that they pitched to the network, that the network also liked it as well, is that it opened up the show and allowed them to not only communicate with Earth, but ultimately would get us off the ship. And really getting off the ship is easier said than done, even though the universe budget was healthier than on Atlantis or SG1. You would eat up a lot of that budget just by virtue of let's say, being such a huge cast and like the amazing visual effects. The idea is like, SG1 and Atlantis were always off-world, but you're always visiting these forested planet, and people
Right.
would get on us like, oh, it's always a forested planet. I would always argue that if they were going to explore a planet, they would more often than not really explore a planet that would be capable of supporting life. And what did Star Trek call them? Class M planets.
Class M.
And so by virtue of that fact, you were more likely to see trees and vegetation similar to that of Earth.
But you're not going to pick plants to eat on desert worlds.
Right.
To be fair.
Right. So I think Rob and Brad were mindful of that. So they wanted to vary the looks of the planets. The problem was that if it was like, if you were going to go off-world a lot of the time, it would just bust your budget. Just because you didn't want to do forest all the time, you would have to create these amazing sets or mats. On the other hand, they felt that the ship, just being on the ship all the time, would feel claustrophobic. Mm-hmm. And so that's why they introduced the stones.
Okay. All right. I loved the design of this craft. James Robbins, his artwork is just absolutely stunning. Rob took Darren from Gateworld and myself on a tour of the ship before the show had aired, and it was Jules Verne. I mean, it was like walking into a Jules Verne novel. And James Robbins said, we built this set with steel. We built it to last for several seasons to amortize that over the course of potentially 5 seasons of show. What did you think of his design?
I thought it was amazing. I remember the first time I walked on the set, it wasn't even fully constructed, but it just had a design unlike anything we'd seen on Stargate. It was almost kind of like a steampunk look. And then sort of, those corridors had kind of almost like a dark, foreboding feel. I know when I did Dark Matter, production designer Ian Brock was very much influenced by the look of Destiny in designing the interior of the Raza.
Yes.
So, I just love the look. I just, just the everything from top to bottom. By top to bottom, I mean not only sort of texturally the walls, the architecture, but the ceilings and floors. That was one of the big things Rob always kind of hated about the SGC, is that the floors were painted concrete, and the ceilings, there were no ceilings. Whereas Destiny, right. I mean, you can shoot up, you can shoot down. It was just an amazing set.
And the fact that you guys chose to do, from a production standpoint, unconventional lighting, which is one of the things that I noticed early on in watching it and in talking with you guys, was like, you know what? We're not going to fully light some of these scenes. Some of these people are going to be slightly in the dark, and it's going to kind of be an indication. You can lend it to their personalities or their objectives that way, but it was going to be it was going to feel more real.
Yeah. The lighting was kind of a point of contention amongst viewers. I mean, this is kind of the issue. When you produce a show, you see the very best quality. So you're watching it on the kind of the best screen. Right. You're seeing, so it looks amazing. Everything, the visual effects to the lightings to the sound. And then, you broadcast it and it goes out on their conventional, analog televisions, and people at home can't see anything. That was the big complaint. And ultimately it's it lent a certain atmosphere, and it was really a beautiful show. But I know many viewers kind of complained because they couldn't see anything.
I think one of the things that has spurred a lot of the chatter in the past recent years of people going back and rewatching the show now and finding that discovering that they like it is partially due to the fact that we have enormous televisions now. And if we turn off the lights, we can see it. So I think that there's an advantage there to this industrial boom of flat screen TVs and home surround sound systems.
It's funny you say that, because I have noticed an increasing number of fans who actually Stargate fans and non-Stargate fans alike, who either discovered Universe for the first time or gave it another chance and suddenly, said, wow, this show was great. It's really too bad it only did 2 seasons.
Exactly. Let's get the elephant out of the room, or at least address the elephant.
Which one? Yeah.
The elephant that was, boom, Atlantis canceled, boom, SGU is launching, which led to the greater impression that one was literally substituted for the other in Sci-Fi Channel's eyes. And Atlantis fans and some, frankly, Atlantis cast members did not take it well and chose to exercise their First Amendment rights to say what they wanted to say. Thoughts on that before we get into this?
Yeah, no, it's something I mentioned in our discussion of Atlantis's final season. That I honestly did not think it would be Atlantis's final season. I thought we would do a season of Universe, the first season of Universe, and probably the final season of Atlantis,
or movies.
Yeah. But I was honestly expecting that 6th season, so it came as a surprise to me that we didn't come back. Ultimately, I don't know the reasoning. I mean, I have to say, I reached out to the studio, and they said, even though I think financially, it didn't make sense for them to do a 6th season of Atlantis, there were other reasons to do it. I think they suggested one of the reasons was obviously to use Atlantis as a lead-in. So, and then when I spoke to the network, they seemed to indicate they wanted that, a Atlantis. So I'm not really sure what.
And then it just didn't happen.
And it didn't happen. And like I said, I was disappointed. I know people were like, you guys canceled Atlantis. I actually took a pay cut to go on Universe, which I appreciate. I want to do the show, but certainly I was financially worse off without a 6th season of Atlantis. So believe me, I would have loved to have seen done a 6th season of Atlantis, especially because we had kind of spun kind of very rough ideas of stories we wanted to do for the 6th season. I mentioned I want to do that, Wraith hybrid 2-parter for the mid-season 2-parter. I thought that would have been fun. And, I was genuinely disappointed in the fans. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, so whatever the reason, I think it was poorly handled in that it certainly gave the impression that one had to be canceled for the other. And really, there's no way to sort of argue out of that. I don't think at that point.
Well, on the one hand, season 5 was arguably the best season of the show produced. You guys, you were figuring stuff out as you went along, and it got better and better. And a second to that, fans had already been programmed to be able to recognize and get fat and happy with their circumstance of having 2 Stargates running. So we're just going to do this again, and that's not what happened.
No.
So what stories, other than the ones that you wrote, that we're going to get into here in a moment, really stood out to you from your peers for that first season? And which ones?
I'm going to bring up the episode list, but off the top of my head, the opening 3-parter, which was originally a 2-parter, but there was just so much.
Oh, we lost Joe.
Fire.
I lost you, Joe. Can you back up? The 2-parter was originally a 2-parter.
Yes, originally a 2-parter. The opening 2-parter became a 3-parter, and in much the same way that Light and Darkness was actually 1 episode and then became a 2-parter. Yeah. So hang on. So I mean, really, for me, the opener was really stood out for me. I love the way that it kind of bridged old Stargate with new Stargate. Rick and Daniel guest starring, which is something maybe will happen in the new spinoff.
I can only hope
when that happens. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I like that, and I love sort of the introduction to the cast of characters, and I just love that set. That Destiny set was very much a character, and just that opening of them kind of flying through that gate, coming in hot. It just kind of stayed with me. And then of course the design, the introduction of the ship, the introduction of kind of this kind of new FTL window, the jumping. I just that was amazing. And then of course, obviously the first 2 episodes were great, and then there was a trip to New Mexico that Rob took for part 3 of Air. That was just gorgeous. And it goes to what I was saying about the fact that you want new looks for planets. You want to differentiate the looks, and I mean, White Sands was gorgeous. So
have you been?
I have not been. I did not go.
I've gone twice. It's one of my three times. Yeah. It's one of my favorite places in the country, and you guys used it to perfection. And the Bisty Badlands, which we'll get into in season 2, was another stunning season. But White Sands really showed that, as far as I was concerned, really showed that you guys were serious in growing the production value and really just putting every penny onto the print. It was solid. I loved Rob's episode Time. I think
I was going to get to that. I mentioned no. I mentioned another one that stood out for me was Water.
Yes.
Which another we visited another planet. Sort of very Hoth-like, and just kind of a beautiful episode. But yeah, very much. If I think of standout SGU episodes, probably my favorite is Time, because I just love a good time travel episode. And I remember we were breaking the episode in the room, and we kind of broke it in the room, or Raw had the idea, but he didn't have the ending. And he's like, okay, I don't have the ending. I'm just going to go away and come up. I'll see what I can figure out. And it was quite something. What he came up with was quite something. And I know sort of, a lot of the fans were like, is part 2 next week? What's going on? And, I just love the way that episode ends. It just
was Butch Cassidy a part of the discussion when you guys were all together, or did he come with that later to button up the ending?
I think he probably came up with that at the end.
Okay.
I mean, in the script stage, I mean, you beat out the episode, and often it's not super detailed,
right?
And you leave it to the writer to come up with the details, and Rob did. It was fantastic. I just remember we ended up building that jungle set on one of our stages, and get rain, and it just it was just quite the episode, just from a prep and production standpoint, but also from a finished episode standpoint. It's really one of my, I think, top 5 favorite Stargate episodes.
It looks great. I would agree. It's definitely up there. And the unconventional ending, I was among those who were like, wait, what's going on? And it took me about 2 or 3 minutes to process, and it was like, okay. Yeah. We're seeing part 2 of 3 at least loops, and we have to infer the next one, which I think is great. You want to make your audience think. That's how you do it.
It does, yeah.
Absolutely. let's get into your stack for this season. Space, which I believe was 11.
Yeah, a little late episode.
Episodes were broken up into additional pieces. It turned out to be 11. I think that this was one of the more frustrating things as a viewer, that this episode was retained for after the mid-season break. I think that had it been a part of the group for the first half, I think that Universe may have had a stronger performance, because this is where everything begins to expand. That the build-up that we've done for the first 10 episodes of getting to know people is starting to pay off a little bit. Yeah,
and it could well have landed, it should have landed before the mid-season break, but it didn't, because like I said, the opening two-parter became a three-parter.
Right.
And and light became darkness and light. So that's an extra 2 episodes. It got pushed. So what was it? Episode 11?
It was 11.
Yeah. So it would have been 9. So it would have been 9. So I mean, in that respect, you're right. It probably would have benefited from airing before the mid-season break.
What are your thoughts on Young leaving Rush to die at the end of Justice?
Love it. I love complicated characters. I love good people who do bad things almost as much as I love bad people who do good things. So it's something that obviously we've never done in the previous 2 Stargate shows, and that's what kind of appealed to Brad and Robert. There's this opportunity to really delve into kind of the darker side of these characters and have them make these kind of darker decisions. We did a bit of that in Stargate, but not to this extent. I mean, we talk about Shepard feeding the feeding that guy to the Wraith. Was it became Mrs. Miller? Or
Miller's Crossing.
Miller's Crossing, sorry.
Right. You're close.
Yeah. So in that, but then again, I mean, it was dark, but there was really, it wasn't really. He didn't really. I guess he crossed the line in some respects, but I think, like, was he dying or something? And he willingly sacrificed himself, and Shepard allowed him to do it. Whereas here, Young is getting rid of a nuisance. There's no really, explaining away what he did.
And a political enemy at that.
Yeah.
So.
And I love the fact that Ray ends up calling him out on it in the next episode.
Mm-hmm. She sure does. You shouldn't have left him on the planet.
Yeah.
But I mean, at this point, he had, I would argue, more than a nuisance. He was set up to be a murderer. And it's like, okay, at a certain point, you guys have got to find some way to make peace. And it takes several, it moves into the first half of season 2 before that is beginning to be resolved.
It is a huge holy shit moment. I mean, were you surprised? Were you shocked?
I was really shocked. I was like, this ends here. He really did. And I wanted to really like Young and his motive. I mean, he was never going to be like a Jack, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But after he did that, it's not that I disliked him, because I didn't dislike him. It was like, I didn't know where to put him in my mind. And that's, I think, what you guys were going for.
Exactly.
Exactly right. We have a great adversary that is just touched on in season 3 with the departure of episode 3, with the departure of a craft off the hull of the ship, which says, it's another nod that, yes, this is a continuing story. We're going to be leaning into other things. And you return this species in this episode. They park themselves right in front of us and tell us in English, surrender. I'm trying to remember the Nakai. I think it was the Nakai.
We never named them.
Never on screen.
I just named them for the,
I'm assuming that was a production name.
No, I just named them out because everyone was, I think we referred to them as the aliens.
Yeah, the
throughout.
blue
Then
aliens.
the fandom was like, what are they called? What are they called? And I thought, well, I guess they do deserve a name. So
this was one of the cooler species because I forget who it was. I think it was Image Engine who had developed the replicators largely. And then they went on to produce the prawns for District 9. Mm-hmm. And then you guys were like, you can do total photorealistic bipeds. Let's have some for the show. And they looked amazing. They were so cool. How do you think they were pulled off?
I think amazing. They did such an amazing job. And of course, overseen by our visual effects supervisor, Mark Savella, the amazing Mark Savella. But Brad and Robert in particular were they didn't want to do rubber masked aliens anymore. Right. That's one of the things with because this was a very different show. But we were never able to do full CGI aliens in the past, really, because they were just so prohibitively expensive, and they never really worked out. I remember, what was that episode where
you had the Riol with Lieutenant Tyler in The Fifth Man in season 5. It's one shot. It looks cool. Well, it's technically 2 shots. But you're right. You can't really sink your teeth into it.
No, I mean, I was thinking of the episode where they join Landry at his cabin.
Yes. Okay. The bear, the mutant bear.
Yeah. It really didn't work. But but these aliens did. Yeah. And I remember the fandom being very impressed and very, very excited at the prospect of finally encountering aliens, and not just people in
who are descended from ancients.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, arguably, other than the Iranians like Tenet and Jupe, you had a story reason for humans. And at this point, you're so far out there in the universe that the only life you're going to encounter is going to be non-human.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Ursini in the second season, they were cool, as we'll get to them. But I think the Nakai were something special. And I really wanted to know what their story was. Mm-hmm. Would you guys have kept that nebulous and kept them just like pecking at Destiny like ducks throughout the show's run, or would you have gone into that?
I think sort of as time would have gone on, we probably would have revealed a little more. I'm not sure if we would have fully revealed. I don't think we would fully reveal everything, but I mean, after a while, the pecking, while interesting, it's a little frustrating. So I imagine we would have revealed more.
Was there a larger game plan for them that was planned?
This is a question for Brad, because he had a larger game plan for a lot of the elements, including like the major arc related to the background radiation. And, he explained some of it. And, he told me after the show was canceled, he's like, I'm not going to reveal it, or don't reveal it online. In the event that I get the opportunity to finish the story, I want to surprise the audience. And so...
Well, I mean, the thing that terrifies me is that, something's going to happen to him and we'll never know. And it's like, please have
He told me.
Okay. And David Blue knows. So,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, I always want to have, his wishes are paramount.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll get the opportunity to tell us in a kind of in a roundabout way if that 4th series goes.
Yeah, I would hope that.
With Destiny.
Right, and I would hope that in a tangential way, their circumstances could at some point weave into the plot. So that would be nice. All right, let's have a look at Divided. You did these two back to. It really is a 2-parter in many, or a 3-part, I suppose, in many respects with Justice. The first real come to blows moment for the show with the cast, the crew of the ship being split down in 2.
First, I have to say that I did not write this episode. I wrote Space.
Okay.
And Paul wrote Divided, but as writing partners, we shared the on-screen credit. But I love this episode, just the dynamic of two factions facing off in the ship, and just that sequence where they start putting their plan into motion and sealing off decks. It's just, one of my favorite sequences of the series.
It's a great departure from, and arguably like a SG1 would have never done this. It's one of those things where it's like, the heroes are the heroes, the villains are the villains. And it's another great example of making a grayer show where they're more like us than they are like any of these heroes that have been depicted before. And, you risk turning the audience against some of the characters because of some of the things that they do. Yeah. But I think in the long run, it works.
Yeah, I agree.
Subversion. Dr. Rush and Homeworld Command investigate when Colonel Telford is suspected of spying for the Lucian Alliance. So, yes. Lou Diamond Phillips' character was always kind of a wild card figure. I mean, obviously he was a U.S. Air Force colonel, but at the same time, something was going on with this guy, and I think that was pretty apparent midway through the show, that season 1, that something's happening here. How was it having Lou Diamond Phillips on the show?
I love Lou. Lou's a great actor and just an incredibly nice guy, and a gourmand. He does love his food, so I do appreciate that about Lou. But Lou is fantastic, and his character was, I always thought very interesting in that he was kind of real thorn in Young's side, and even as his character developed and you find out sort of what's going on, you don't really know how much of it is outside influence or how much of it is him. And he's one of those classic characters that you start off hating but end up really liking. They kind of redeem themselves, and I was a big fan of a good redemption arc, and Telford's was great.
Was the intention to get him on Destiny by the end of that first season? Because, I mean, we're talking a pretty big actor here who's stepping in to lend his weight to the show. And was there a potential for him to become a complete regular in season 2?
I don't recall.
Okay.
That being the plan, because if that was the plan, then he would have been a regular in season 2.
I see. Okay.
I can't speak for season 3 or what the plans were for season 3.
Right.
He was an interesting character, but I think the reluctance to have him actually on the ship stemmed from the fact that he served a lot of the similar functions that Young did. Right. And even though sort of the characters were kind of a loggerheads, by the time I think season 2 rolled around, he was, like I said, he had redeemed himself. So we're kind of missing, that initial conflict between these two characters.
Right. He almost was the guy who was on Earth just at that point in the end, just going to bat for Destiny. He was kind of their ambassador at that point because he had been out there and managed to come back. And so he's got the guilt for that. Yeah. And then, what else are you going to do? That was supposed to be his mission. So Rhona Mitra guest starred as Kiva in the last 3 episodes, I believe, of the season, which was Subversion and Incursion 1 and 2. Powerful presence. She ended up getting killed off at the end of the season. But it was, you guys were growing the Lucian Alliance into a threat for Destiny. And I loved the continuing story from SG1 all the way through, saying that, again, this is a continuing universe and there are consequences. What did you think of that casting, and how did the season resolve in your mind?
Yeah, she was great as Kiva. I mean, as I mentioned, the fact that Paul and I read our script separately. He wrote Sabotage, and I was writing Incursion, which was originally a single episode. And then as I was writing it, this rarely happens. Usually at the outline stage, you realize you've got two separate, you got 2 episodes. But as I was writing it, I realized this is, as I was getting to the end of I think the fourth act, I realized there's no way I'm going to be able to wrap this up in 2 episodes.
You're running out of runway.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, great, okay, so do a 2-parter. And so I wrote the final 2 episodes. I remember Brad saying, I can't believe we thought this would be a 1 episode because there's just so much going on. And yeah, very dynamic episode. I mean, I kind of like the Lucian Alliance. I mean, when we originally introduced them, I know sort of the fans were like, oh, these guys are kind of buffoons. But again, we kind of redeemed them as,
you evolved them. Give them more, black leather.
Yeah, exactly. We got Mike Doped involved and on board. I was like, working with Mike. So I mean, as a season finale, it was just also a lot of fun. I think I was trying to think back to all like the season finales I've ever written, and I wrote them down, and all of them usually end with, I think Capture and All Hope is Lost. I think back to Camelot. I think back to what was it? Was it the Siege? The Siege.
Yeah, for season 1 of Atlantis.
Yeah.
Well, in both of those respects, for Camelot and the Siege, Camelot is essentially the ending of the first season of a new show, if you want to look at it that way. So when in each of those situations, at the end of a season 1 of a new idea, you really want to go balls to the walls, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and I love that shot of Young looking up and the pulsar shutting everything off again.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to end it. I think that it would have been a mistake to do this episode as just a 1 episode, because the character beats, those quiet scenes where they're all trying to figure out, okay, what's the next move, are what make Incursion 1 and 2 work. And my favorite moment from this episode, well, in addition to Chloe absolutely putting Eli in the friend zone, you're such a good friend. He's like, oh, thanks so much. Damn. Is Ray holding the radio and talking to Kiva and saying, in our government, the military takes orders from a civilian government.
Yeah.
And then hands the radio off to Young, who's actually been telling her what to do. And it's like, this is not a good example of our society working the way it's supposed to. We're kind of at a stalemate of our own on board ship and have had to set our issues aside to deal with this other threat.
Yeah.
It's a great first season.
Yeah.
And when it ended prematurely, and we'll get to that in season 2, man, it tore me up inside, man.
Yeah, same.
So let's go ahead and look at fan questions, shall we?
Excellent. Let's do it.
Let's bring them in here. It'd be helpful if I have them up. Okay, Jonas wanted to know exactly how old is Destiny, Joe? What a great way to start.
Brad.
Right.
This is the question for Brad, right?
Yeah.
Any questions related to the ancients or the history? I direct you to Brad Wright and or Robert Cooper.
All right, that's fair. I did ask him before episode 1 of Dial the Gate launched. It was my question. I wanted to confirm that Destiny was older than Atlantis, and he said yes. So there is that. George Flaxman. Joe, now that you've read Brad's script, can you tell us anything about it?
Absolutely not. If anybody's going to tell you anything about the script, it should be Brad. I mean, I basically kind of laid out sort of what appealed to me about the script and the fact that it's what I've been saying all along, that you can't just create a show that appeals to the existing fan base. You have to create a show that is fresh and new, that new viewers who don't know anything about a Stargate can jump on board, and yet at the same time is full of, let's say, elements, characters, callbacks that longstanding fans, can delight in, and that's what it does. And it has like an important thing for me is a sense of humor, and it's got that, some great characters. Like I said, more than a few surprises.
Okay, does it evolve the story?
Oh yes, absolutely, it does evolve the story.
Okay,
Yes.
that was my first question. Does it evolve the story, and is it funny? And so that's solid.
Yes, on both counts.
All right. Harley Parks, Stargate Universe's music track was just amazing. Will the atmosphere be the same? I guess they're inquiring into that. These are Brad Wright questions, folks, just so you know.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, Joel Goldsmith, who was responsible for the music on all three of the previous Stargates, passed away. So in that respect, it won't be the same. But again, once this show gets into production, I mean, Brad will be showrunning, who's the showrunner on the other three productions, so you can expect the same level and quality.
And Neil Acree, who did a lot of the music alongside Joel, he is still very much around.
Yes, yes, we follow each other on Twitter.
There you go, exactly. I want so badly for a compendium of Joel's Stargate music to be released, particularly from Universe, which I've gone to the trouble of ripping it from the Blu-rays just so that I can listen to it, particularly a lot of the music from the pilot and from Darkness and Light and the finale, which I think that final piece of music may be the best piece of music that he wrote for the franchise.
Yeah, it is really memorable. It's beautiful and just the perfect accompaniment to the ending, to the finale. And I honestly, I don't understand why MGM never released the soundtrack. I know its fans have been asking forever.
I know. I had my hands on the Atlantis soundtracks while I was there working with MGM for a plan to use some element of it for Stargate Command. I never had physical access to Stargate Universe, and Neil and I have tried to put our heads together and figure out where it was, and I don't know. It may be on a hard drive somewhere with the Goldsmith estate. So we'll have to see. F7 Super Serial. All right. Hello. Destiny is always, I think, referred to in the neutral gender, it, despite ships being traditionally referred to as she. Was this a deliberate choice? That's a good point. I don't think Destiny was ever referred to as a she.
To be honest with you, I didn't even think of it.
And I don't think Atlantis was either. Atlantis was a ship too.
Yeah, so. I don't recall. I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay. Nico Kibler, can you tell us how far the negotiations with Amazon are, and will you be involved too?
I will not be involved. I was just asked to read the script and provide my thoughts. And I have no idea about the timeline. Just the fact that the deal is finally closed. The deal with MGM suggests it'll happen sooner than later.
Okay, that's fair. Parker Brown, is there hope of reintegrating SGU with the proposed new Stargate series? I think you've touched on that, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this show has to basically stand on its own.
Yep.
Which, judging from the pilot, very much will. Having said that, there is the possibility to tie up some loose ends with regard to, let's say, Atlantis or Universe down the line. Once we, once Brad gets the show's, feet on the ground.
Kevin McCabe, biggest question, Joe, was there ever fish in Jack's pond?
I believe there were always fish in Jack's pond, and Jack was just screwing with them.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you're not going to put any bait on the end of your lure, you can say that there are no fish in your pond because you're never catching one that way. Manuela Solaho. I apologize if I butchered that, Manuela. How many Stargates are in the universe, Joe?
Lots and lots. Lots and lots and lots.
I would think it would have to be in the hundreds of thousands. Maybe tens of thousands, but there's got to be a lot.
It's a fair approximation. In the universe?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Is it your opinion that the ancient... Well, I mean, this is an ancients question, I guess, for Rob, but is it your opinion that there were networks potentially in Andromeda or some of these other galaxies out there that the ancients took a look around the local
in
group?
my mind, yes. There were other networks in other galaxies.
Okay. Yeah, I would think so.
In my mind, we never really discussed it, but
absolutely. Elizabeth Lee, is the wormhole drive introduced in the end of Atlantis to make a useful appearance either with Atlantis itself or especially the ship going to catch up with Destiny? These are all Brad questions.
No, actually, the wormhole drive was something that I'd wanted to do.
Okay.
And we never found the opportunity to introduce it. And then basically we ended up introducing it in the finale, which I just, again, in retrospect, I wish we'd introduced it earlier.
Okay.
So that it didn't seem sort of like, kind of a Deus Ex Machina.
That's true.
The finale.
Did it concern you that it would have made hyperdrive travel obsolete and that it would have given perhaps too much strength to Atlantis?
No, because we had a way to address that issue, which was kind of set up Stargate Extinction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that it was one of the more clever ideas from Atlantis, where you turn on this lightning rod basically, and it makes hyperspace and subspace basically a detonator. I thought that you can't go near it, you will die. And I thought that was always just a great idea. You can't turn stargates on, and you can't go into hyperspace. That was cool. Just in case, I loved SGU. I was wondering, however, why things grew as dark, particularly with Rush, and then stayed there for so long.
I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, the idea being that we didn't want to just resolve issues quickly. We wanted that, realistically, kind of in the real world, you have conflict with someone, and ideally you resolve that in a week or two. But especially if you're working in close approximation with this individual, it takes a while for things to work out.
Okay. And also, we were looking at 5 seasons, that was the story target, right?
Yes.
So you're just beginning to get knee deep in stuff by the time the plug was pulled.
And they did end up achieving an understanding.
Yes. Yeah.
Eventually.
Absolutely. When we get to the episode that introduces it's Twin Destinies. That exchange between them. You know what? I'm saving this for next season.
All right.
I was happy that Young came around to Rush eventually. Let's put it that way. Applied Focus. I would have loved an SGC anthology show that would have been following various missions from several teams. We could check in on the Atlantis Project or Icarus as a broader Stargate show. That's an idea.
Yeah, it's an idea. I mean, but in that case, you're dealing with a revolving cast. So you have the costs of, of the revolving cast. The fact that you're going off-world every episode, brings up what we talked about, the fact that are we visiting forested planets all the time? If not, then how are we going to change up the look? So I love the idea, but it just would have been very, very expensive. But from a story standpoint, I always like the close-ended stories. You go to a planet, encounter some difficulty, and then wrap it up by episode's end.
That's fair.
For some reason, though, anthologies don't sell well.
They don't?
No.
Oh, I love them.
So do I.
Interesting. Yeah. Lockwatcher. Joe, was there any actor you wanted to get on the show that you just couldn't get for one reason? For scheduling, or they just weren't interested?
I honestly can't think of an actor that we wanted that we didn't get.
Okay.
None really come to mind. I'm trying to think, and
I read somewhere for Threads that the Anubis character in the diner was thrown at John Goodman, but I don't remember if that's true or not.
This is news to me.
Yeah, I would have loved to see
absolute
Goodman
news
in
to
that role.
me.
But the actor who portrayed him was great. He's unfortunately passed on. But I mean, that would have been interesting to see John Goodman in that role.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been interesting. I've never heard. This is a first for me.
Okay,
so maybe it was the case, but I don't.
Teresa MC from the Atlantis episode Subversion. Were there any plans to salvage the Wraith cruiser on the bottom of the ocean?
No.
Yeah.
There were no plans, simply because we would have been carrying an extra expensive set.
A wet one at that.
Yes.
All right, this is esoteric, but I'm going to throw it at you. Dan Ben, in the pilot of SGU, why didn't the Hammond have Asgard weapons on board? It's a fair question. Was it that the Odyssey was the only one equipped with that? I don't think it was. Yeah, so the Hattaks are in orbit of the Icarus planet, and we're throwing conventional weapons at them. That's a fair point.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't recall.
Okay.
This is a great question for Brad and Robert.
Right. Yeah. The Odyssey had Asgard beam weapons.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure that the Daedalus did too. Maybe the Hammond just wasn't outfitted with them yet. All right. Summer. Hello, Summer. In SGU, there seemed to be more drama within the crew instead of the old formula where it was us versus evil in the universe. Which of these styles do you personally prefer writing for?
I very much prefer writing the style that we saw on Dark Matter, which is an episodic format existing within the backdrop of a serialized storyline, very character driven with a heavy dose of humor.
It's almost a hybrid, so you can get the best of both. You know, I think that SG1, I think that all the shows really pulled this off well.
Yeah.
So, Raj Luthra, was the design of Destiny meant to look like a chevron from a bird's eye view?
I believe, yes, that was the intention. Good catch. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. William Aarons, how does Joe see the character of Dr. Rush, who as the chief engineer, so to speak, of SGU, has a darker personality than either Carter or McKay, but almost has a religious desire to find the meaning of life?
How
do you see the character? Like, I guess it's like, what was your, impression of the character and how Robert Carlyle pulled him off?
The character was pretty much how you described him, and Robert Carlyle was like such a huge get, and he was, amazing. I'm sure Brad or Robert already talked about this, the fact that he came on, to the offices and basically pitched Brad, various levels of his Scottish accent. And he says you can go. I think he had like 5 different levels from very thick Scottish accent to
unintelligible
to non. I think to Brad picked a 2, which was basically not the lowest easy to understand. And it was funny because I could understand him perfectly when I would watch the dailies or in the episodes, but when I would see him in the lunch line and he would talk to me, half the time I didn't understand what he was saying.
Yes, so
his natural, accent is so thick.
Elena tells the story of first meeting him, and he's very soft spoken. He's very gentle, and talking to her, and she was like, "Oh my God, we are screwed. No one's gonna understand this guy." And then when he's on screen, he's right there, and she's like, "Oh, okay, all right, this is gonna work." Yeah, he just dials it up. Yeah. So. Harley Parks, the Raza started in cryotubes when SGU ended in cryotubes. Coincidence?
Yes. Everybody points that out. That is a coincidence, but an interesting one nevertheless.
There you go. Raj Luthra, any details on a planned arc for season 3 of SGU?
No, actually, we never got that far. Unlike Stargate Atlantis, where we kind of beat out, well, not even beat out, we actually pitched out a bunch of stories that I put on the whiteboard. We didn't even get a chance to work out an arc. I mean, I remember on my blog shortly after the cancellation, I pitched out like a bunch of ways it could have gone from having being in stasis for whatever, maybe 3 or 4 years, and having Telford lead a team onto to the Destiny to rescue them, to maybe a little lengthier in them encountering another spacefaring race, to them being out for like centuries and Earth being long gone by the time they woke up. Yeah. So who knows what we would have gone with.
I loved for me personally as a viewer, I was disappointed that we were leaving this galaxy at the end of season 2, because that twist at the second half of the season, I thought, led to all kinds of things that we could mine with having another race of humans in that galaxy who were pretty much more advanced than we were, and resources that we could mine. But those damn drones, had us reconsider. I would have loved to have had an SG team from that race connect to us and help and lend us a hand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great idea.
William Ahrens, was there ever any thought to not killing off Rhona Mitra's Lucian Commander Kiva?
Yeah, originally, but we ended up going.
Things change.
Yeah.
The one with the many Z's. When the Incursion script became a 2-parter, the 2 episodes before it moved down a slot, you lost the initial 17th episode. Do you recall the plans for that episode in season 1?
I don't think there were really plans at that point. I think we'd kind of left the finale open.
Okay.
Or was it supposed to be the finale? I to be honest, I don't recall.
Okay.
I mean, we just were moving episodes around, like from the very beginning of the season. Like I said, the 2-part became the 3-parter, the single episode became the 2-parter, and then once again, we ended with a 2-parter.
A solid one. That dude right there. Who decided on the songs for the episodes? The real world songs.
Oh, that was all Brad and Robert. They decided who. I'm if it's not K-pop, I don't know it. So. In retrospect, it's a good thing that I wasn't picking the songs back then, or
some of them were pretty great.
Or Blackpink.
That scene in season 2 with Brody. Yeah. I mean, that's so fun. And apparently, the batteries, that was something that was done in blocking, and they were like, keep it in. It's great. So it's the little beats like that that bring the characters to. I love it.
Yeah.
So, Ivan Telenchev. What was the story, the in-universe story behind the reuse of the Vanir/evil Asgard spacesuits from Atlantis? The ones that were 100 G's a suit, according to you.
Yeah, something like that.
Right.
What was the in-universe? Did we have an in-universe?
There was no in-universe explanation. I mean, it's assumed that group of Asgard came across Destiny at some point and just copied the technology. That's a twisted way to wrap around a reuse of production assets, which is really all it is. I mean, and then just update the helmet.
Yeah.
So, Felipe Canat, I would have liked to see a little bit more of arguing between Eli and Dr. Perry.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and David,
that's one dynamic. Yeah, she was fantastic.
I love that actor. I will reach out to her and see about getting her on the show. Let me see. I'm not going to ask that. That's a Brad question. Erica Strom. Joe, if you had an unusual favorite meal on a Stargate planet, what do you think it would be? I'm surprised we've never asked you this question. Yeah,
an unusual favorite meal?
Yeah, from another world.
Well, I don't know what they would offer. What would be on the menu?
I don't know. Hopefully something that wouldn't kill us.
Yeah.
The potatoes from No, it wasn't. Was it supposed to be as like a sweet potato?
Yeah.
And that scene with Ronald
yeah.
Greer. Oh man, that was funny. He's like, "Ooh, it's so delicious," and everyone's like, "Oh really? Yeah." That was solid.
I would be totally up for trying some alien food. More like kind of the vegetables. I've never been a fruit fan, but yeah.
Winston Alexander, were there any plans to do a Stargate Universe multiverse after season 2's Common Descent when you were introduced the split? We get that with Epilogue.
Yeah.
Carl Binder, one of my favorite scripts of his.
Yeah. He wrote a lot of fantastic scripts over the years, but that is also one of my favorites, absolute favorites.
Tracy wants to know, Joe, how is Suji?
She is great. She's actually crying right now because
I heard her.
Oh, she ate already.
Aww.
I don't know if she's crying, but yeah, she's not walking. So she's kind of stopped walking like 3 weeks ago. So now we got her an attachment to her wheelchair so she can still kind of move her legs and hopefully ensure that her muscles don't totally atrophy. So
do you have a specific diet for her?
There's food she likes.
Okay.
But I mean, she's almost 17, so she's at that age where, whatever she enjoys.
That's fair. Absolutely. Yeah. Guanalex. How much is Claudia Black like Vala?
I would say not that much like Vala.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Juan Manuel.
Characters who are like their characters. I thought Brian J. Smith was very similar to his character.
Brian, yeah. I would definitely David Blue.
Just kind of.
So in terms of their interests, were very, very compatible.
Yeah, I guess their interests, just in terms of personality, though.
Right. I think that David is stronger than Eli was. In terms of.
Yeah. Scott was a very likable character, like a good, grounded human being, and Brian was the same way. It's like Ivan Bartok used to say about Brian, he's easy to root for. Whenever he landed something, he's got something. I mean, you're happy for him, but he's such a good guy.
Absolutely, I would have to agree with that. Teresa, MC, would you cast David Reed in a cameo role in the new series?
Absolutely.
Oh man,
if I was writing the show, but I'm not. So this is a question for Brad.
Juan Manuel Perez, did you ever beat yourself up not making a Furling episode?
No, not at all. I actually never wanted to see the Furlings.
You got to keep some things from mysteries.
Yeah.
I think the Furlings were completely unlike the giant koalas that we saw. I think that the koalas were just okay, get off of us now. Here you go. Here's something. Would you agree, or do you think that's potentially that's similar to what they looked like?
We always joke that if we ever did find the Furlings, there would be these gaunt, kind of hairless beings. But I don't know. I prefer to think that maybe they're extinct and we'll never know.
Yeah, I think that they flew.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
That's I won't go any further than that. All right, Joe. Thank you so much for coming on and discussing another chapter
pleasure.
of the show and taking so many fan questions. We had a lot of fan questions today. Thank you all.
Great.
So
I believe next month it's going to be the wrap up.
I know.
Dial the Gate.
I know it's the end of our monthly meet and greets. I still would like to have you back in the future, just a little. I mean, here and there. So I'm very thankful to have you on the program.
Sure.
There are certain actors that I'd like to bring on to have a round table with you. So next month we'll wrap up our journey together.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you
for
so
having
much.
Me,
you take care of yourself.
All right. See you guys.
Kisses to Suji.
I will.
Bye-bye. Joseph Mallozzi, Stargate executive producer. Thank you so much for these wonderful questions, everybody. I really appreciate you submitting. Teresa MC, of all the spaceships that appeared in the entire Stargate series, David, which is your favorite? Ooh. There was something about this ship that I can't put my finger on it. I have always been in love with this design, and I think a lot of it just has to do with, in terms of my love for the ship, has to do with the mythology that was behind it, and a mythology that was never completely explained. And I think when you put those things together, I think that this is probably the ship for it. So it's half of the design and half of its significance to the broader Stargate story. My a chunk of my heart was put into stasis with that crew, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next with them. So that's what I got for you guys. I really appreciate y'all turning in. Dial the Gate is brought to you for free, and we do appreciate you watching. And if you want to support the show further, buy yourself some of our themed swag. We're now offering t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, and hoodies for all ages, as well as cups and other accessories in a variety of sizes and colors at dialthegate.com/merch. Checkout is fast and easy. You can use your credit card or PayPal. Just go to dialthegate.com or straight to the merchandise button at the top of the page. And thank you so much for your support. Another question. Can we get Will Waring on the show? I think I've reached out to Will. It's been about 8 or 9 months, though. I will reach out to him again. I think he said yes. It was just a scheduling issue. So I need to do a better job of keeping up on that. Work and life and other things have gotten in the way. But what I typically do is about once every month or so, I just sit down and I send out 20 invites. And then the ones that we get back are the ones that we have moving forward for the next month. I need to get back into the rhythm of sending out a set of invites every single week. That's just how we've been doing it. So my thanks to my producer, Linda Gategabber Fury. She is my right hand in publicity and helping make the show go around in terms of outreach. So thank you, Linda, very much. As well as my moderating team, Summer, Keith, Tracy, Jeremy, Reese, and Anthony. You guys are great. And big thanks to Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web. He is our web developer that makes dialthegate.com possible. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, Robert C. Cooper is back for part 6 of his ongoing interview series with us. We have a discussion on seasons 3 and 4 of his episodes of SG1. So everything from Dead Man's Switch to Watergate. We've covered about 6 or 7 episodes, and it was a good conversation. So we will be bringing him in next week. That was pre-recorded, and that's going to be airing this coming Saturday, the 9th at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern, followed by a new discussion with Kevin Sabo, who runs 3dtech.pro. He's responsible for Atlantis and the Replicator. I think that's it from this set. And also little guys like this one. So he created this puddle jumper, which actually has a pretty complete interior, and also the secondary look of the Replicators. He designed this as well. And if you want to check out the items that he has available, go to 3dtech.pro. And we'll be having him on in a pre-recorded episode next week to discuss his design process for creating and bringing to life these little critters and spacecraft. So he will be airing at about 2 p.m. Pacific time on the 9th. Thank you so much once again for tuning in. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate your time. We'll see you next week and on the other side.